Okay, so I haven't seen this one. That's a little scary. Okay, this sort of pale, gaunt person over here is a self-portrait of myself when I was about 16. So I grew up in small town Iowa and just always had a pencil in my hand, loved to draw, loved to make art. And I had an aunt who did a little painting, and she encouraged me, bought me some oil paints when I was 11. So I just started painting. I didn't know anything about how to do it, just started painting away. And I would copy faces out of books, but I just decided, I'm going to start just setting my paints down on my bedroom dresser and sitting in front of the mirror and just drawing my face as practice. So that's just kind of one of those, it actually looked like me back then. So this painting I did when I was in my mid-20s. My husband Shane and I got married at 18 and moved up west from Iowa. And I had been inspired by a lot of images of the Native people through the years. And I saw a painting in a Southwest Art magazine in the 70s by Bettina Steinke. The painting was called Father and Daughter at Crow Fair. And I just thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen. So I thought, well, what's Crow Fair? And back then, no computers or anything. So dialed 0 on the phone, how can I, Montana? Anyway, long story short, we ended up at Crow Fair. And so this was the first year I was there. I met this lovely young woman and asked her to pose for me. And so she posed for me in the Bighorn River. I might have embellished a little bit with some of the cliffs, but this turned out to be the first major painting that I ever really did with a person in a landscape. And it was a 30 by 40. And it was acrylic, actually. It was an acrylic on canvas painting. This one is another painting of a young woman that I met. I started going to art workshops. I had not had any art schooling or anything, so started going to art workshops in my 30s and met her when she was posing at a Scottsdale Artist School. We became instant friends. We're still great friends 40 years later. We've visited each other, painted her kids and painted her, but I've noticed through the years that when I know a person, just like the landscapes have become, I need to feel some emotion for that person. This is my most recent portrait of a woman in a landscape, and it took me about 10 years actually from its inception. I kept going back and changing the sky or changing something. I think in some ways this is the most meaningful portrait at this point in my life that I've done. I know this woman, she's a friend. She's a beautiful Absaloga Crow elder who just turned 90. And she posed for me with her personal eagle fan. And she had been a teacher, and she's just a woman of a lot of wisdom. And when I recently gave her a full-size framed print of this, I gave her a print and she gave me a prayer. She prayed over me in Crow and a blessing. And I mean, that's the most greatest gift of all, really, is I think the relationships that have come from the gift of wanting to do the art. So before we go to the next slide, because the next slide I think is a video that lasts about 5 seconds. So I think in my 60s, I guess I started going to art residencies, and that became a way that I could focus on immersing myself in the landscape part more, getting a relationship going with the land that I had found happening with the people that I painted. So right where I live, there's not a lot of public land, and I would have to find a place to drive to paint. So on my 65th birthday, we decided it would be fun to go to the Beartooth Mountains and set up on the side of a steep slope, kind of perched on it. I guess I thought this was a good idea. I don't think I realized how scary it would be, but the wind came up, of course, and the reason this video you're gonna see is about 5 seconds is because I'm holding on to the easel for dear life as it's getting away. I think apparently I wanted to prove to myself that I could survive painting outdoors. Anyway, go ahead and if there, yeah. And it was steep. So I thought, okay, I can do this. If I can do this, I can do anything. I've been just so fortunate and grateful and blessed to be able to have attended some residencies in this area, because I think that there's so much variety in this land and climate and atmosphere. This was when I was at Jentel in a February residency, and drove up here in a snowstorm. I think this was the last day actually of the residency, but that's how I'm set up. You know, I've learned to love the snow. I've learned to love, I guess it's the challenge of it again, the adverse conditions, you know. I find it kind of exhilarating. And so, let's see, go ahead to the next one. Now this one was the first day after I arrived at Jentel, after driving up in a blizzard. And this is a frozen creek off to the right here, but there was, because it was February, there was a little bit of ice that would break apart, you know, and so, oh, it just makes me cold. Just, my hands are cold just looking at that. Oh, in fact, the title of that painting was, because I looked at my phone, 10 degrees, 10 mile per hour wind, felt like 1 below. Ugh. In fact, I'm so cold, I'm gonna put on all my painting stuff right now. I'm just gonna put it, and I've gotten so that when I look out and see a sky, I can put this stuff on and set it my easel like in 2 minutes, so. I'll show you what I had on when I painted this. It shouldn't take me too long. But I do this every morning because it's been in the 30s every morning. Sometimes it's been like 29. And I have big boots, and I just put all of this stuff on every morning. I like to figure if I have 8 layers on, I'm usually dressed for about anything, and I can always remove it, you know. This keeps the sun out of my eyes. Gotta put on the hand warmers and gloves. I might have forgot a layer. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and set up my easel. Well, at least I'm warm, I'm not cold anymore. Go ahead and change to that next slide, please, because you'll see the close-up of this. The painting was done on a palette knife. And it's weird to see it so big because actually the painting is 3.5 inches by 12 inches. Okay, so then I'm ready to paint. I've got all my stuff here. I take my Pringles can with brushes and palette knives, put it right on there. You know, I just have everything a person would want. I've got all kinds of stuff in there. On to the next one now. Say a little something that happened to me when I was out painting these aspens the other day. You know, I think the thing that really is the most meaningful, important to me about doing a residency is just the time to be alone. You know, creative people are usually pretty alone anyway, but I really, I need to be alone more often, just alone, to hear what's going on without, you know, around me. So I remembered this event that happened maybe 30 years ago. We were living in Colorado, and we had come to a worship service one morning at our church, and this lady who was in her 80s must have asked the pastor if she could get up and share right away. She said, "Oh, I just have to share something with everybody." She was a woman that was almost deaf, and she had 2 hearing aids. And so she said, "You know, I wanted to see the aspens this weekend, so I asked my son to drive me up to see the aspens." And we got up there, and it was just the most beautiful sight. And I didn't want any distractions. I wanted to just everything quiet. So I took out my hearing aids, she said. And as I stood there for the longest time, and I was just watching the beauty of those trees and the quaking of the leaves, and pretty soon I started to hear, sorry, I get emotional. I started to hear the trees screaming out the glory of God. And she said, I just stood there. It's the loudest thing I've ever heard. She was completely serious. She was a woman probably in her mid-80s. She said, all I could do was stand there and take it in. I could hear the trees, the leaves just screaming out the glory of God. And I thought of that the other day when I was painting this. And as soon as I felt that, I thought of Melchi. And I thought, this is exactly what her vision was. She wanted people to come, not here just to create, not here just to, absorb or visualize. She wanted people to come and feel, learn how to feel things,